For question number 13, we are going to solve an absolute value inequality. And before I solve this problem, let me talk about some of the things that we need to know for absolute value equations and inequalities. So as usual, I will write down some of the notes that we need to know. And when you are dealing with absolute value inequality or equations, there are a few things that you have to pay attention to. First, you always want to have the absolute value on one side, and preferably on the left-hand side. And that's the first situation, is that when you have the absolute value of something inside, once you isolate the absolute value, and then if it happens to be equal to a positive number. So that's the first situation that I want to talk about. And what do you do with this situation? Well, you are going to split this into two different equations. The first equation is that you take a look of the inside, and then the inside stays the same. So you just write down whatever the inside is, and then you make that equal to the positive number that you had. Okay, so pretty much nothing changed for the first part. Second equation is, and let me put the word or in between, because we are going to do this, and then we are going to do the second part. And both of this will give you an answer to it, okay, an answer to the original equation. So you want to solve this, or the second situation will also work. And that's the one that we are going to solve as well. The inside also stays the same for the second one. Okay, the inside never change. The inside never change. But then I'm going to set this equal to, instead of a positive, I'm going to put a negative in front of that positive number. So we are going to solve this case, and then we are going to solve the second case. And then you will get an x value for here, or x can be another value from this part. So you have two equations to work with. Okay, you have to do two parts. Okay, so that's the equation 1. Okay, that's the equation for the absolute value. The second situation is when you have the absolute value by itself on one side, again, preferably on the left-hand side. If you have an absolute value, it's greater than a positive number. And this is what we are going to do. Again, we are still going to break down into two pieces, two different inequalities. The first one is, you still have the inside. The inside never change. And then for the first one, you just want to set it as greater than whatever the positive number is. Okay? The second situation is, first of all, let me put on the conjunction or. So we're going to do this, and that will give you the answer. Or the second part will also give you the answer as well. The inside, again, the inside never change. But then for the second one, I'm going to switch the inequality. Instead of a greater than, I have a less than. So instead of a greater than, I'm going to have a less than. And then I'm going to change the positive number. I want to put a negative in front of whatever that positive number is. That's the first situation. And then the second situation, you are going to do both. Okay? So this is the equal sign, and this is the greater than sign. So you have two different situations so far. And then the third one, and this is the one that we're going to use for question number 13. The third one is when you have the absolute value on one side already, and you have something inside. If you have this, it's less than a positive number. And by the way, sometimes you may have less than or equal to. They are the same. You do the same thing. Okay. And likewise, for the second situation back here, I had greater than, but it works the same as when you have greater than or equal to. Okay, for this, so notice that we have a less than, so you want the absolute value to be within a positive number. Okay, and again, the absolute value means the distance of whatever the things inside. You want to keep the inside to be less than some positive number. Well, I'll just tell you what to do with this situation. For this situation, when you have a less than sign, you are going to put the inside in between. So I'm going to write down the word inside. I'm going to have this in the middle, and then I'm still going to have the less than equal to less than the positive number. But for this case, when you have the less than case, I'm going to put the inside in between of the positive, and then I'm going to make the negative positive number right here. I'm going to put a negative in front of whatever the positive number that you had first. So this is how you break down the absolute value with less than. Absolute value is less than a positive number. So you put it inside. Again, you put it inside, in between of negative of this number and then the positive of that number. This is the idea that we're going to use for question number 13. Okay, for question number 13. And let me write down the question right here, and then we can get to work. For 13, we have absolute value of 1/2 x minus 3 absolute value minus 7/2 is less than a -1. So let's just pay attention to this inequality right here. Okay. So the first step is you want to isolate the absolute value. Okay. So all the notes that I wrote down right here, I will have the absolute value isolated on the left-hand side. Well, the first thing is, let's take a look of this inequality first. Unfortunately, we have fractions. We have the over 2, right? 1/2 and the 7/2. So what we can do is, I can multiply everything by the common denominator, which is just the 2. Let me multiply everything by the 2. So I'm going to put the 2 times this absolute value. Okay, I'm just going to put a 2 in front of the absolute value. This is like one term. And I'm going to put 2 next to the 7/2. And I'm going to put a 2 multiplied by 2 to the -1. For the first one, you can treat the absolute value as the parentheses. Okay, you can treat the absolute value as a parentheses. And then what we can do is, I can put this, I can distribute the 2 inside. You can only do this with absolute value or parentheses. You cannot do this with square roots. Okay? Then what do we get? 2 times 1/2 is just a regular 1, right? And you have 1x, so you just have x. And then 2 times -3, you have -6. And then next, I have minus 7/2 originally, but I'm going to multiply with that by 2. The 2 cancels, so you just have -7. And then it's less than -1 times 2, which is -2. So this is good because we have no more fractions. Then we are going to work with the -7 right here. I'm going to add the 7 on both sides. And then I will get absolute value of x minus 6. And then this cancels to be equal to 0. Less than -2 plus 7, which is 5. So I clean up the equation, right? Okay, I clean up the original inequality, and now we have this. Absolute value of x minus 6 is less than the positive number 5. And this is exactly what I pointed out right here. Absolute value of something inside is less than a positive number. So what we're going to do is break down into this. Put the inside in the middle. Okay. So this becomes, I have the inside, which is x minus 6. I'm going to write down the inside first. And then I'm going to put the 5 right here. And then I'm going to put a -5 right here. So I'm going to sandwich the inside, which is x minus 6. I'm going to sandwich this, the inside, in between of -5 and 5. And then, to solve for this inequality, again, we want to isolate x. But in this case, the x will be in the middle. Okay, we can also do that. So look at the middle right here. I have x minus 6. So what I need to do is plus 6 on all of them. Okay, plus 6 on everything. Because you have to look at this as an inequality, and then you can also look at that as an inequality. But we're just solving both of the inequality at the same time. Then, -6 plus 6 is 0, so I will just have an x left in the middle. And the inequality will stay the same because we didn't divide by a negative number. So, the inequality stays the same. Then for this one, right here, -5 plus 6 is just 1, positive 1. 5 plus 6 is positive 11. So, what we're saying is, x is in between of 1 and 11. Okay, x is in between of 1 and 11. And what we want to do is, we're going to take our solution, we are going to graph our solution. So let's look at the graph. And there are two ways to graph it, but I'll show you guys both. So the first way is, you draw a number line first, and then I want to indicate where my 0 is. Let's say this is my 0. And then let me label the 1, and then let me label the 11. Let's say the 11 is right here. Now the first way is, when you want to graph the solution, you are going to use either open circle or closed circle. Right here, I have x, and I have like just a less than symbol right here, right? 1 less than x. I don't have the line under it, so we are not going to include the 1. We are not going to include the 1. So I can use an open circle at the 1 to indicate that I don't want to include the 1. Likewise, for the 11, I don't have a line under it. That means I don't want to include the number 11. So I'm going to use an open circle at the 11. And then I want x to be in between of 1 and 11. So I'm going to graph everything in the middle. So I'm going to just shade in the middle pieces. Okay, so this is one way by using the open circle. Only if you have a line under it, then you will fill in the circle. Another way to graph this is, again, you draw the number line, you indicate where the 0 is, and then you indicate where the 1 is and where the 11 is. Instead of using open circle, we are going to use either bracket or parentheses. Here, again, we are not going to include the 1, so I'm going to use a parentheses. This indicates that we don't want to include the 1. Okay? And then for the 11, I don't want to include the 11 as well. So I'm going to use a parentheses at the 11. X is in between of 1 and 11. That's why my parentheses was going this way and that way. Then I'm going to shade it in the middle. On the test, both of this should be the correct answer. Both of this will be acceptable. Okay? So you can do it either way. I think if you do it this way, it's more clear that you don't want to include the 1 and you don't want to include the 11. But if you're doing this way, the advantage of doing this, using the parentheses or the brackets sometimes, is that when you're writing the interval notation, even though in this question it didn't ask you to do the interval notation, but I will show you how as well. If you use the parentheses on your graph already, then this is exactly what the interval notation is. Notice that we only have one piece of the interval, right? So to start with the interval notation, first of all, again, I don't want to include the 1. I'm going to use the parentheses. The left point is 1. And then I'm going to put a comma. The right end point, where I'm going to stop, is 11. So this means x is any number in between of 1 and 11. And the 1 and 11 are not included in the interval in the solution set. Okay? So this is the inequality, this is the graph, and this is the interval notation.